If you've been scrolling through endless pages of gaming laptops, wondering whether you're about to throw another few $100s at something that will just sit in a corner gathering dust, you're not alone. I get it. Spending that kind of money on a laptop that ends up being too weak for the games you love, or too bulky for the coffee shop workflow you need, feels like a gamble you don't want to take. So before you click add to cart, let's break down the ASUS TUF A18 and see if it really fits the kind of use you have in mind. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest thing people worry about with a laptop in this price range is the balance between raw horsepower and portability. The TUF A18 pushes a Ryzen 7 260 series CPU and an NVIDIA RTX 5060 GPU, which on paper sounds like a monster meant for 1080p high framerate gaming. In practice, that combination does let you crank out smooth settings in titles like Elden Ring or Cyberpunk 2077 without the constant dip into the low teens. I ran a few benchmark videos on my own rig and the frames stayed well above 60 frames per second on medium-high settings, which means you're actually looking at a machine that can keep pace with the current generation without needing to dial everything down to low. But the real differentiator for a lot of buyers is how the laptop behaves when you're not in a gaming marathon. The TUF A18 packs an 18-inch WUXGA display that hits 144 Hz, which is a step up from the typical 60 Hz panels you see on most laptops. That higher refresh rate makes the desktop feel noticeably smoother, whether you're scrolling through a spreadsheet, editing video footage, or just browsing social media. The IPS technology keeps colors consistent from side to side, which is a boon for creators who do any kind of color-critical work on the go. In my own video editing sessions, the extra screen real estate gave me a little more room to line up timelines without feeling cramped, and the 144 Hz refresh helped reduce eye strain during long editing days. Now, every strength comes with a trade-off. The 18-inch screen is undeniably impressive, but it also adds to the overall footprint of the laptop. It's not exactly a carry-it-in-your-backpack pocket device. At roughly 6 pounds, you'll definitely notice the weight if you try to shove it into a small backpack for a coffee shop day. If you're the type of gamer who travels light and needs a machine that can fit under an airline seat, this might feel more like a portable desktop than a truly mobile solution. Another practical consideration is the battery life. With that RTX 5060 drawing power, you're not going to get more than 45 hours of mixed usage before you need to plug in. That's perfectly fine for a desktop replacement that sits on a desk most of the day, but if you plan to game on the go or do long editing sessions away from an outlet, you'll want to keep the charger handy. I tested it on a typical workday mix of email, coding, and a couple of short game rounds, and the battery dropped to 40% in just under 3 hours. So, think of this as an always plug-in kind of machine. In terms of storage and memory, the laptop doesn't skimp. A 1TB PCIe SSD means you'll have snappy boot times and plenty of room for a large game library, plus space for video projects that can easily run into hundreds of gigabytes. The 32 GB of RAM is more than enough for multitasking between a game, a browser full of tabs, and a video editing suite. What's nice is that the SSD is touted as 15 faster than a traditional HDD, which translates into almost instant file transfers when you're moving raw footage around. Connectivity is where the TUF A18 starts to feel a bit future-proof. Wi-Fi 6E gives you a solid wireless backbone for streaming and game downloads, while the presence of Thunderbolt 4 and a USB-C port means you can hook up an external monitor or a fast external SSD without needing a dongle. For gamers who also stream, the built-in FHD webcam isn't the sharpest, but it's adequate for a face cam if you're broadcasting over platforms like Twitch. So, who should actually buy this laptop? If you're a mid-range gamer who also dabbles in content creation, say, a YouTuber who records gameplay, does light video editing, and needs a reliable machine for both tasks, the TUF A18 hits a sweet spot. It gives you a screen large enough to work comfortably, graphics that can handle modern titles, and enough RAM to keep multiple apps running without hitch. The price point also feels justified when you consider you're getting a combination of a high refresh display, a solid GPU, and a big SSD all in one package. On the flip side, if you're a competitive esports player who needs the absolute highest frame rates on a 1080p 120Hz screen, you might find the RTX 5060 a bit underpowered compared to an RTX 4070 or higher, especially if you want to push ultra settings. Likewise, if you're a traveler who